Aizen is a character known for many reasons. His exceptional roasts that can dismantle a person's spirit before he even draws his blade, his incredible charisma that captivates both admirers and detractors alike, and his nearly omnipresent involvement in every major event in the Bleach story. All of these points solidify him as a top tier player in the Bleach universe. However, we cannot overlook Aizen's astonishing power. One could easily argue that he ranks among the top 3 most powerful characters in the story, and at earlier points in Bleach he may have been even considered the most powerful character. Throughout Bleach there are numerous awe-inspiring feats that he has accomplished, and in this video I'm going to be talking about every remarkable overpowered action that Aizen has performed within the story. Some may even say that this is a list of all of Aizen's most greatest arseballs in the story. So without further delay, let's dive into one of the biggest trolls in all of shonen anime and manga history. Aizen's power is often depicted as excelling in every aspect. He is a master of Kido, demonstrating the ability to cast high-level Kido spells flawlessly. He is an expert tactician and strategist, even gaining meme status as an all-knowing planner who had orchestrated the entire plot. His skills in Zanjutsu are also exceptional, with only absolute masters like Yamamoto and possibly Urahara surpassing him in swordplay. However, among Aizen's numerous weapons, it is his Reiatsu that truly establishes him as a formidable powerhouse in the Bleach universe. Spiritual pressure is essentially the currency of Bleach's power system, defined as the amount of force one can release with their spiritual power. It determines the effectiveness of an attack against an opponent and the effectiveness of an opponent's attack on the user. Aizen possesses a limitless supply of Reiatsu, and it was for this reason that he was identified as one of Yhwach's 5 great war potentials. It is this lethal combination of power, intelligence, and skill that enables Aizen to perform the incredible feats that we're about to discuss in this video. In my opinion, Aizen's first most impressive feat, which sets the stage for the levels of insanity that he would reach later on in the story, is undoubtedly the large-scale hypnosis that he induces upon the Soul Society, especially the Gotei 13. As revealed within chapter 171, Aizen had used the power of Kyoka Suigetsu to completely hypnotize all of the Gotei 13, tricking them into seeing what he had wanted them to believe Kyoka Suigetsu's powers were. The fact that he could do this and maintain the illusion flawlessly is remarkable. Even more astounding is that Aizen had managed to deceive the Reiatsu powerhouses that make up the Gotei 13. Thanks to the information that we learn within the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, Kyoka Suigetsu's power is limited by the user's spiritual pressure due to its incredibly draining effect. However, this restriction no longer impacts Aizen, who can use it repeatedly and over a long duration of time. Now, this is one of the earliest indications of Aizen's insane power, but in some ways what he does immediately after this truly cements him as one of the most iconic villains in shonen manga. This next fascinating feat that Aizen performs comes shortly after the first one. Aizen's quest to retrieve the Hokyoku hidden within Rukia's body eventually leads to a confrontation with Renji in chapter 173. He orders his former lieutenant to leave Rukia behind and to exit the scene as a final act of kindness due to their previous affiliation. Unsurprisingly, this kindness is rejected and Renji chooses to fight him instead. Now, just before Aizen could finish him off, his blade is blocked by Ichigo, who arrives just in time. Now, the two decide to team up against Aizen, with Renji using Zabimaru to obstruct Aizen's vision so that Ichigo can deliver the finishing blow. Renji does his best and Ichigo reacts just in time, but as he swings his sword with all of his might, Aizen casually blocks it with a single finger. The anime takes this to a whole nother level, as we hear Ichigo's theme song number 1 playing during his advance, but the music abruptly stops the moment that Aizen's finger makes contact with Ichigo's blade. It implies that Aizen had not only stopped Ichigo's attack, but in a meta sense, stopped Ichigo's theme song as well. It was a totally unexpected moment, which adds to the incredible introduction of him as a villain. The reason that this feat is so impressive is because of the tremendous growth that Ichigo experiences throughout the Soul Society arc. From him defeating Jidambo, to struggling against Ikkaku, to drawing against Kinpachi, and finally fighting defeating Byakuya, Ichigo had progressed from a seated officer to a captain rank level, yet this had meant nothing in the face of Aizen's power, further proving that he had outclassed not only the captains but also our protagonist, making all of the power-ups that he has received up until that point meaningless. The complete disrespect as Aizen ends the encounter with a slash to Ichigo's midsection, narrowly missing his spine and leaving him incapacitated. This is one of the greatest villain introductions in anime history, and it's an incredibly overpowered feat that he accomplishes here. I mean, name me another villain who was able to stop the main character's theme song and dish out so much disrespect in such a short amount of time. Aizen's next significant feat occurs quite a bit later, in chapter 376, where after effortlessly defeating Haribel, he prepares himself to face off against the entire Gotei 13 as well as the Vizards. The mere idea of any character doing this is remarkable enough, as holding one's own against them would require far more power than most characters in the story can muster. However, Aizen doesn't just hold his own, he casually waltzes through them and all of their attacks. He even takes it a step further by demonstrating his vast superiority over them in multiple different ways. The first notable feat occurs within chapter 387. While fighting Aizen, Shinji activates his Shikai Sakanade and begins to invert all of Aizen's senses. Under normal circumstances, this would seal the fate of any opponent, as it would require the ability to completely rewire the victim's fighting style in order to function in Shinji's inverted world. Initially, it seems like Aizen faces a similar situation, as he struggles with its hypnotic powers and receives a cut from Shinji as a result of the confusion. However, this is only temporary, as Aizen quickly figures out how to navigate within Shinji's world and he ends up defeating him. This feat is often underrated due to how quickly it had occurred, but it deserves way more attention. The next one takes place within chapter 391, where it seems that the Gotei 13 are beginning to gain the upper hand in their battle against Aizen. Soifon tries her hardest to secure a win by attempting to kill Aizen with Nigeki Kisatsu. She lands the attack, but Aizen is unsurprisingly still alive. He then explains that a clash between Shinigami is a battle of Reiatsu, and if one possesses Reiatsu much higher than their opponents, then they can simply negate their abilities and powers. This means that Aizen had faced off against a instant death ability and simply shrugged it off. But it doesn't just end there. As I mentioned earlier, the Gotei 13 seemed to be gaining the upper hand, and while Soifon couldn't land the killing blow on Aizen, it simply spiraled into a series of events that led to Aizen being stabbed in the chest by Hitsugaya, or so the Shinigami had thought. Beginning to celebrate their victory under the assumption that the battle against Aizen was over, the person that was impaled on Toshiro's blade had changed from Aizen to Momo, revealing that Aizen had used Kyoka Suigetsu to switch places with her. Although it's difficult to determine when and how this had happened, earned his position as a top tier troll, with his iconic line, "At what point did you think that I wasn't using Kyoka Suigetsu?" Aizen was on the ground the entire time, watching them make fools of themselves. This was another clear indication that the Gotei 13 and the Vizards were so outclassed that Aizen could have ended the battle against them at any point. Immediately after this, Aizen does just that. As Hitsugaya completely loses his composure, after realizing what he had done, he flies into a blind rage in an attempt to kill Aizen once again. However, this ruins the formation that the captains were trying to maintain, leaving every single one of them open to attack. Aizen doesn't miss this opportunity as he moves at blinding speed, slashing each and every one of them, with each successive attack incapacitating the Shinigami. He even makes it clear that he had attacked without the intention to kill, meaning that each of those slashes could have been fatal if he had wanted them to. Now this is simply amazing when you think about how much control Aizen had over this fight and entire situation. This is where Aizen's feats stop being impressive and start getting a bit too absurd, starting with what had happened within chapter 402. During his battle against Urahara, we see that Urahara manages to slip some seals into Aizen's wrists while they were fighting, and this was made possible due to Aizen's increased carelessness after subjugating the Hokyoku. Urahara explains that by using the power of those Reiatsu blocking vents, he is able to halt the flow of Reiatsu, and due to the extreme buildup that would cause, Aizen would be incinerated by his own spiritual pressure. Now the seals function as intended and they create a massive explosion, and when the dust clears, we see that Aizen is perfectly fine. He appears to have withstood the force of his own power turned against him, and not only survived, but appears to be visibly unscathed. Despite his outward appearance, he states that it was a powerful attack, and had it been used on anyone other than himself, then even the power of the Hokyoku wouldn't have been enough to save them. Essentially, this was Aizen's way of telling Urahara that he's built differently, but things just keep getting crazier. Now the next feat, I had in fact debated to include this into the video, and upon reconsideration I saw no reason not to talk about this, as it's still a massively impressive showing on its own. Now after emerging from the explosion of his Reiatsu, Aizen fights a team consisting of Urahara, Isshin and Yoriichi. We see a few scenes of this fight which seem to imply that all is not lost, and that these three incredible Shinigami may still stand a chance against Aizen. However, it appears that Aizen was only playing around with them until he had decided to get serious. Fast forward a chapter or two and Aizen has casually defeated all three of them, each being very powerful Shinigami in their own right, some of whom I would comfortably say are stronger than a good number of the current captains of the Gotei 13. Now moving on to chapter 407, and this is where I believe that Aizen had performed one of, if not his greatest feat in the entire Bleach story. After leaving the crime scene that is fake Karakura Town, he decides to use the Dangai to travel to the real Karakura Town, and in true Aizen fashion, he is just strolling through the Dangai like he owns it. Gin on the other hand starts to worry, because the Dangai isn't exactly the place you want to show off, and he isn't wrong, because the cleaner appears not too long after this, and as its name implies, it was going to erase the two of them from existence if it had touched them. Gin begins to warn Aizen that the cleaner doesn't care about his new hairstyle and he will kill him anyway, but Aizen unsurprisingly does the impossible. The cleaner exists to stop any souls from lingering within the Dangai and incidentally exploiting the time distortion that exists within it, as 1 hour on the outside world is equivalent to 2,000 hours within the Dangai. Aizen barely finishes his sentence before turning around and killing it with a casual flex of his spiritual pressure. The absurdity of this feat still surprises me to this day. The fact that Aizen had killed a being with his spiritual pressure, despite the fact that the cleaner is immune to spiritual pressure, was easily one of the best ways of illustrating how much Aizen's power had transcended the limitations of reason and the very laws that govern the universe. It also supports the idea that Aizen had truly become a sort of higher dimensional being. This fact will be put to the test as the fake Karakura Town arc continues. After showing off within the Dangai and taking a detour, Aizen and Gin finally arrive at Karakura Town. While Aizen pointlessly terrorizes Ichigo's friends, Gin leaves with Rangiku only to return alone in chapter 413. Gin suspiciously walks ahead of Aizen and ends up touching his Zanpakuto and tells Aizen not to worry about killing Ichigo's friends, as he would handle it. Then to everyone's surprise, Gin stabs Aizen in the chest with his Zanpakuto. Following this shocking turn of events, Gin explains his motives and reveals that he had left a fragment of his Zanpakuto within Aizen's body, and this fragment is capable of destroying him down to a cellular level. Under normal circumstances, this would have been the end for anyone. As expected, Aizen is not your typical character. His body starts to disintegrate, but he ends up surviving, and because of Gin's actions, he evolves to an even higher level and proceeds to casually kill Gin and continue on his way. Now it's after Aizen kills Gin that he ends up pulling off another great feat. When Ichigo arrives onto the battlefield and the two start fighting, if you could call it a fight, as Ichigo is completely dominating the godlike Aizen, he ends up evolving into a monstrous new form, but it doesn't help him much. After Ichigo activates his final Getsuga Tensho, Aizen realizes that Ichigo has ascended to an even higher dimension of power than him. Despite this realization, Aizen takes a full blast of Mugetsu to the face, and in the anime the attack is depicted as completely vaporizing him, but even this isn't enough. Aizen not only survives, but he also stands and speaks to the new powerless Ichigo, and this is before Urahara's seals take effect. It's then revealed that Aizen had become immortal due to the influence of the Hokyoku. Now this probably explains how he had survived several devastating attacks while the Hokyoku was a part of him, but it doesn't help with everything that he had endured before that. It only emphasizes how ridiculously powerful Aizen is with or without the help of the Hokyoku. Now quite a lot of time passes before we see Aizen again, but in typical Aizen style, he manages to keep us on our toes when he does reappear. He makes his return to the story in chapter 616, and he becomes an actual player within the 1000-Year Blood War arc in chapter 622. After Yhwach absorbs the powers of the Soul King and creates numerous dark, shadowy monsters that quickly overwhelm and overrun the Soul Society, in that moment of despair, Aizen returns and he is freed by Shunsui and is on the side of the Soul Society during its darkest hour. Aizen steps up to the challenge, and despite having the range of his spiritual pressure heavily restricted, he casually kills a number of these monsters just by sitting in his omnipotent chair. After making his grand entrance, he casts a Kurohitsugi that spans the entire area, and it practically erases all of these creatures without a trace. Urahara is just left to wonder whether if Aizen has grown even more powerful than he was when he had fought Ichigo, which at this point is not surprising at all, considering that it's Aizen that we're talking about. Now, not too long after this, Aizen attempts another feat of such magnitude that it's definitely worth mentioning. After defeating the monsters with his Reiatsu, he tries to shoot down the Soul King's palace from its dimension, intending to let it fall down to the Soul Society. Now, while we don't get a chance to see him accomplish this goal, it's intriguing to consider if he could have done this. Moreover, Aizen's confidence in his own ability to do so suggests that he may well have succeeded if he was given the opportunity to. Aizen's next notable feat occurs closer to the end of the story. After Yhwach defeats Ichigo and leaves him within the Soul King's palace, he returns back to the Soul Society, and there he finds Aizen waiting for him. He welcomes him in the most boldest way possible, and the two begin to fight. During their encounter, Ichigo and Renji team up with Aizen. Everything seems normal until Yhwach begins to overpower each of them, including Ichigo. However, in the final moments of this group assault, we discover that the person impaled on Yhwach's arm wasn't Ichigo, but it was Aizen. Now, this reveals that Aizen had placed Yhwach under Kyoka-Suigetsu's influence, and he was manipulating everything that he had seen this entire time. Even what he had thought the Almighty had allowed him to perceive. Aizen had succeeded in deceiving someone as powerful as Yhwach, tricking his almighty vision into seeing the wrong futures and leaving him vulnerable to attack. Now, this combined with Ichigo's ability to defeat Yhwach despite being half dead may well be one of the greatest displays of power in all of Bleach. And of course, Uryu's intervention with the still silver arrowhead played a major part in defeating Yhwach also. In the end, Aizen has demonstrated so much incredible power and mind-blowing feats, which results in him being one of the most fascinating characters to follow in all of shonen anime and manga. I really do hope that this isn't the last that we have seen of his character, and I would love for him to make a return during the Hell arc so that he can do what he does best, keeping us all on the edge of our seats, just waiting for him to deliver some disrespect and to turn any given situation into his favor. Now, these were my picks for the most craziest Aizen feats in the entire series. If there were any that I failed to mention, then definitely let me know in the comments, and I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts about some of Aizen's most disrespectful moments. Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.